Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Star Wars fans, Marvel fans, just fans of geek culture in general. My name is James Byron Clark, and this is Long Live Geek Live. It's something I've been playing around with for the last kind of year, but kind of abandoned there for a little while. But it's a concept of just doing a show where we just talk geek culture, and not only like Marvel and Star Wars and stuff like that, but kind of in some ways the concept of what it means to be a geek, which is to be somebody that doesn't always fit into a certain box, that doesn't maybe do things the way everybody else does, has their own mind, and isn't just one of these normal people that just does what the crowd thinks that they should. So that's kind of the concept that we're going for here. For now, though, we're going to kind of talk and go into some Star Wars Marvel stuff today, and anything that you guys have in the comments in the chat that you want to talk about, whether it's Star Wars Marvel stuff, any other kind of geek stuff, or just life stuff, period, point blank. Just whatever you guys want to talk about. But the first thing I want to talk about is obviously this last episode of The Bad Batch. We had Muchi, the Rancor, which was kind of cool. Like we know we've had Baby Yoda, we've had a lot of these different like creatures, Baby Groot in the MCU, all these different like species that we get to see what they look like as babies, and they've obviously all been big hits. I mean, let's be realistic. Baby Groot and Baby Yoda are two of the best things to happen in geek culture in the last 5 years or so. And so to see a Baby Rancor and see this ugly scary creature from Return of the Jedi, but in a baby form, adolescent, whatever, was kind of cool. And I loved it. But one of the questions that people had is Muchi, is this character of Muchi the Rancor the same one that Luke kills? And it turns out, unless if they retcon this, like they have a couple things so far in the books, that Rancor in the Return of the Jedi, his name is Patissa. It's a male Rancor, whereas Muchi is female, and so it doesn't appear that it's the same Rancor. And even if the names don't end up being canon with the books as of right now, I still don't think that they're going to introduce this cute baby adolescent character in the Bad Batch and then allow for that to be the same one that gets killed later on in a movie. I just don't think that Disney and Lucasfilm is going to go that route. So even if it's not officially canon that the Rancor in Return of the Jedi's name is Patissa and that it's male, I just don't think that they're going to introduce Muchi in the Bad Batch and then we find out that it's the same one that Luke kills. I just don't think that that's how that Lucasfilm is going to operate when it comes to that. And I also think that, they introduced this Baby Rancor for a specific reason, and that's to sell merchandise. Star Wars over the last few years has really struggled with merchandise sales. The sequel trilogy didn't do much. Like, there's literally millions of pieces of merchandise from the sequel trilogy sitting on shelves that's never going to be purchased. And I think that, with the Bad Batch and then coming up on these other series, whether it's, well, we've already seen it with the Mandalorian and how much they've been able to sell of a baby Yoda or Grogu. And I think that they're realizing that they've got to introduce characters that they're actually going to be able to sell, because, as great as the money they make on the movies is, merchandising is really what took Star Wars and made this huge, globally iconic company. A lot of it was the merchandising, and having a sequel trilogy that didn't sell well, now they have to remedy that. So they're going to have these characters within the Bad Batch. They have the Mandalorian characters. I made a video the other day showing how the Ahsoka Mandalorian season 2 with her with the hood and the white lightsabers was the number 2 on toys and figurines, and I think it's toys, figurines, and play sets, stuff like that. which is absolutely amazing, especially for us Ahsoka fans, seeing that, you know, people out there are actually buying her merchandise, which means that she resonated with people, with the audience, which I think is just absolutely awesome. So Muchi, I think in some ways is we're going to see some toy sets or figurines, plush dolls, or the Funko Pop dolls or whatever of Muchi. So no, I don't think that Lucasfilm is going to allow for that to be the same Rancor that Luke kills. Eat my bullets. Yeah, James is gonna execute Order 66. We shall see. We shall see. When I get on Battlefront 2 later, we'll see. Maybe I'll play a little Palpatine and send some clones after some people to kill him. But well, I want to be clones. It would be the Stormtroopers. But either way, it doesn't really matter. The next bit of news that I want to talk about is, will John Boyega return to Star Wars? Because he did kind of leave it open a little bit. He made some comments about the possibility of him rejoining Star Wars. And, you know, like a year ago or so, he made it very clear that he had no interest in doing anything Star Wars in the future, that time had come and passed. But in some ways, you know, even though he aired some grievances he had with Lucasfilm, a lot of it had to do with the fact that he's just not an actor that's interested in doing the same character over and over and over again. He wants new challenges, new roles, that type of stuff. But in this interview he just had, he kind of made it clear that he had some interest in, I think in some ways, taking the Finn character, who got the short end of the stick in the sequel trilogy. I mean, he basically was a character that when we first saw him in the trailers, we were like, okay, he's going to be important. And a lot of people thought he was going to be a Jedi. They teased little bits about him throughout the sequel trilogy where you really thought that Finn was going to be something, you know, bigger than he was. And then we kind of got let down on it, and he ended up being much more of a minor character, more than what we kind of expected. So I think that John Boyega could come back to Star Wars if he thought that they had a better story, or if they could expand upon his story and do something better with the character. The interesting thing that I think a lot of people picked up on in his comments is that he said if JJ and Kathleen Kennedy are involved, then he'll come back. And I wonder how much that is 100%, like that has to be that those two are involved with it. First of all, I've talked about this before. I think Kathleen Kennedy is going to stick with Lucasfilm. I think she's just going to delegate some of the duties that she did before and that she kind of made mistakes on, and she's going to let the creative people control things and where they're going to go. And I think it's going to work out better, and maybe she'll just, you know, kind of handle a lot of the business side and marketing and financial side of things, and let the creatives do what creatives do. But so I think she's going to be around, but the question is JJ ever going to return to Star Wars? And the thing is, I don't think that he is. I think the backlash that he got, I think the fact that Lucasfilm realized that the fans don't want JJ anywhere around Star Wars. Another reason why I don't think Rian Johnson's ever going to do his trilogy is because Lucasfilm understands how toxic the name Rian Johnson is to Star Wars fans. So I don't think JJ will be back. So does that mean that John Boyega wouldn't come back and play Finn again if JJ isn't involved? I think that if he were to sit in a room and have a conversation with Dave Filoni and Kathleen Kennedy, or just Dave Filoni himself, after an hour or so of talking to Filoni, I could, and especially if Filoni were to sell him on an idea what he would do with Finn. I mean, Filoni's just, he's such a good speaker, and he's such a great person. I don't see John Boyega having that conversation with Filoni and not being interested in doing that role. So I could very much see Boyega returning to Star Wars. And then there's the next question of, do we want to see John Boyega return to the role? Do we want to see anything with these characters from the sequel trilogy in the future? Or is the fandom of Star Wars so toxic that there's just no way that anything with Rey and Finn and Poe I think Kylo Ren's dead, but you know, if we could possibly see him, you know, a younger version of Ben Solo at some point. But would fans even welcome any of these characters again in the future? And I think that there's enough potential, especially with Finn. I think Finn more than any of them. Rey might be a harder sell, but I think give it a few more years and let some of the hatred for the sequel trilogy die down just a little bit. And I think with the right project that Finn could be given on something else to do, a movie or a TV series, and maybe especially if it was like a Disney Plus series. And if it's sold on the fact that he's going to be a Jedi and that it's going to be focused specifically on him and he's going to be the main character, I could see a lot of fans jumping on board of that, especially if it's clear that Filoni's the one that is calling the shots on it. Not necessarily writing it, not even doing the outline, but Filoni is hiring the people that are going to be in charge of that project, and ultimately he's going to be the one responsible for it. In that situation, I think fans could welcome Finn back, but I think it would have to be a couple more years. In fact, I don't even think they can announce it right now. Like if they were to announce that they're going to do something with him and say it's going to be 2 to 3 years from now, I think that people would start talking trash about it so much that it would build up this hatred, and it wouldn't be a success. Yes, I'll hit on that in just a second, eat my bullets, but I think it would hurt the potential of that series or that movie. I think they would have to wait a couple more years, give a couple more shows and a few more things of showing Filoni kind of in charge of the creative side, so people can really start to be optimistic and have faith in him. And then after that, if Filoni is the one up on stage saying, "Hey, we're gonna do this, where it's gonna be a Finn series," and he's the one explaining what it's going to be, then I think fans, even some of the really big sequel haters, will be on board of it. Yeah, Disney wants to do Star Wars shows, not movies. And I think part of it, this is the thing, is they want to make sure that next Star Wars film does 1.5 billion or up. They do not want to risk having another movie that barely breaks 1 billion. So them doing all these shows, I don't think it's because that's all they want to do. I think they want to start building a stable of characters that people care about and building confidence within the audience, Star Wars fans, that they could tell good stories again. And then after that, I think you're going to start seeing a film per year in Star Wars. I mean, Marvel, the MCU's going to have 4 films this year, 4 films in 6 months. And I don't think any of us really think that's overkill. I think most of us are really excited about that prospect of having that many films. Star Wars, the problem was never that there was fatigue. Maybe a little bit with the Solo thing, but if it was a different movie, if it wasn't Solo, if it was a movie that people actually wanted, coming a few months after Return or Last Jedi, wouldn't have been such a big deal. Or if Last Jedi knocked it out of the park and had been a cohesive sequel to The Force Awakens, and people were excited about Star Wars at that point, then Solo, I think, would have done much, much better in terms of profit, and we wouldn't have had this lull in Star Wars movies that we ended up having. So yes, the movies for sure, they're gonna push those off a little bit, and it might be a few more years before we start getting a good amount of movies. Wanting maybe even getting to the point eventually where there's 2 or 3 Star Wars films a year. I think we'll get there. The shows, though, are going to be very important in making that possible. In particular, if I know they've talked about there being an event with the Mandalorian time period where eventually we have the Ahsoka show, the Book of Boba Fett, the Mandalorian, and if the Rangers of the New Republic ever gets back into production, those series culminating in a big event. But I'm wondering if that big event will be a movie, especially if they get if there's a lot of buzz for what that's going to be. That could be the perfect opportunity for them to build, have the audience love these characters and then want to go to the movie theater to see this big event that they're all part of, where maybe they fight against Thrawn and there's a conclusion to this overall storyline, kind of like a end of a phase of the MCU. not a conclusion of these characters and of these shows overall, but maybe a conclusion of a specific storyline that they're all leading to, I think could be really cool. So movies wise, I think the shows, they want to be able to tell longer format shows within the Star Wars universe, which is awesome. But I think the fact that they're doing more shows and less movies right now has more to do with the declining box office from Force Awakens to Last Jedi onto the Rise of Skywalker, and the fact that Lucasfilm realizes that they needed to reset and figure out something different. So you will see more movies in the future than what they've already got scheduled, and I'm pretty confident in that. So what do you all think? Will John Boyega return to Star Wars eventually, and would the audience, even the ones that hated the sequels, welcome him back if it was done right, and if they felt that Filoni was kind of behind what was going on with it? Now, the next thing I want to talk about, and the first Marvel thing that I've talked about in quite a while, is the opening weekend potential for Black Widow. And whether or not, honestly, this break in the movie-going experience is going to hurt or help what the box office on that movie is. Because let's be honest, this is kind of very much close to a Solo type of situation with Star Wars, where you have a character who's already been previously killed off within that universe, and then we're telling a story that happens before that death. And I think that there's a couple big differences on this, though, but there's some similarities. In both cases, it was a beloved character, who was killed off, and the executives for a long time, you could tell, have wanted to tell stories of their past. The origin story for Han Solo, and then with Black Widow, it's going to be kind of a in between Civil War and Infinity War. And you could tell that they've always wanted to tell these stories, but in both cases, they're probably movies that if people would have been thinking about things differently within the executives of these universes, the MCU and Lucasfilm respectively, I think that they would have made these movies much sooner. But with Black Widow, there was always this, can we have a superhero film with the lead of a female? Just like there was, can we have a superhero film really do well with a black lead? Black Panther and Captain Marvel proved that you can make a lot of money on the movies even with a black or a female lead. And I think that they've greenlit Black Widow in a lot of ways because of the success of Captain Marvel and Black Panther. But it is a film that should have been told before. It's a film that probably should have happened between Civil War and Infinity War. We should have seen this film already. But the fact that she's dead within the universe, I think, has potential to really hurt what the box office is. A few years ago, this is a film that I think would have done $1 billion plus very easily if it would have taken place, if it would have come out in between Civil War and Infinity War. Now, it could take a hit because of the fact that it's coming way later than what it should have. SW Pro, when Bib Fortuna came in for Karen, was like RIP Muchi the Rancor that couldn't beat Luke, but I think it is a different Rancor. I think that Jabba's the kind of guy that probably collects things. He probably didn't just have one Rancor in his life. He probably had several. But that kind of begs the question of where was Muchi at the end of Jabba's life? Maybe Muchi died elsewhere. Maybe Muchi had to fight to the death with the Rancor in Return of the Jedi to see who was going to be the dominant. And if that's the case, Muchi was dead anyways. I don't think it was the same Rancor. Yeah, it's crazy how most of your favorite Star Wars characters aren't even canon now. But that's the thing, is you love that canon. You love the Legends canon, and there's nothing wrong with that. And there's other people like me that are kind of canon junkies, and And I was a huge fan of Legends back in the day, or what is Legends now, but back then was canon as far as the books, New Jedi Order, all that type of stuff. And it hurt my heart when I found out that they were uncanonized. But I've come to kind of live with that fact, and now I'm really into the current canon. And there's room within Star Wars fandom for both. Now, on back to the, will Black Widow break $100 million for the opening? Well, there's a couple of reasons why I think we could feel pretty confident that the movie will. First of all, Quiet Place 2 did $48 million in its opening weekend, which is the most that any film's done post-pandemic or during the pandemic time period. Before that, the top grossing opening weekend was Kong versus Godzilla, or Godzilla versus Kong, whichever one it was. And that one did like 32 million its opening weekend. So we've seen a huge jump from that. Now, if Black Widow were to open this coming weekend, would it do 100 million? At that time, I don't think it would. I think it would definitely do more than A Quiet Place 2. But I'm thinking, you give it another 50%, and get it up to that 75 million or so. I think that's probably realistic where it would be. The movie theaters are still getting open fully. Like, a lot of them are still at half or quarter capacity. There's states that just aren't letting them open up fully. I think by July, give it another whole month plus, I think more movie theaters are going to be open, and I think that the film will break that 100 million mark. I think that it might even be the first movie post-pandemic or during the pandemic era that will break $1 billion overall. And that really depends on whether or not it's open in China. If it doesn't end up getting shown in China, it will not break $1 billion. There's almost no way that it will. But I'm kind of wondering in some ways if maybe this break that we've had in the MCU, and as far as movies are concerned, of course, we've had WandaVision, which I loved, and Falcon and Winter Soldier, which I liked, and those kind of maybe held people over a little bit on the MCU. But the fact that we've gone this long without an MCU movie could potentially help the box office from Black Widow. And it'll be really interesting if there was some kind of alternate universe where we could see what the box office was with Black Widow opening a year ago and there being no pandemic. It'd be very interesting to compare what it's going to end up doing in July and throughout its theatrical run, and what it would have done had the pandemic never happened and it came out a year ago. Because at that point, it would have been less than a year since the last MCU movie. It would have been once again a character that has died already within that universe, and are people going to be as invested in the character because they know what her fate's going to be? So that could have potentially hurt it. And now we just want to see something. We want to see an MCU movie in the theater, and I think it could really help the box office. And I think that it's going to be, I'm really, really interested to see what this movie does, especially considering that for $30, you could just basically get the movie for a month on Disney Plus. So there's that. It's going to probably maybe hurt what the box office could be if it was only theatrically released. So yeah, honestly, this is probably one of the biggest questions that I have that I'm most interested in finding an answer to, is how much Black Widow is going to do opening weekend. I'm not an expert when it comes to box office, especially now that things are a little bit different. But this is my prediction right now. It's going to do $111.5 million the opening weekend. I just made up that number, but let's see how close I end up. But so question is for you guys is, will Black Widow be the first movie post-pandemic to break $100 million? Is it going to fall a little bit short? And what honestly will the box office opening of Black Widow mean for what our expectations should be for Shang-Chi? Eat My Bullets here. Luke is at 810. Nice. We'll have to work on helping get that up a little bit higher when we play next. My Bosk is still only in the 640s. I think it's going to take me a lot longer to get to my max Bosk than I ever thought. But I need to play on what is today Wednesday? Today's Wednesday. It's triple XP on Battlefront 2. So any of you Battlefront 2 fans out there, people that play, get on there and level up your characters today. It's a great day to do it. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the potential of Spider-Man leaving the MCU. Now, when this whole deal came down between the MCU, or Disney and Sony, it was a huge deal, because here's two companies that are huge, gigantic companies that came to an agreement where they shared a character, and nothing like that had really been done before. Like, I think that most people assume that if Spider-Man was ever going to appear in the MCU, it would be because Disney and Marvel was able to repurchase the character and buy him back, and then he would be officially in the MCU. The fact that they came to an agreement where they would share him, that was interesting, and it really showed the leadership of Kevin Feige being able to go in and pitch the deal and actually get it done, which is pretty interesting. Now, the fact that the Amazing Spider-Man 2 did so poorly and wasn't really loved, and then I think people really never bought into Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker. I think that really also forced the hand of Sony, because they needed to be able to revitalize the character. And so having him part of the MCU, and not only that, but having Peter Parker be mentored by Kevin Feige. I mean, with him having some hand in it and them knowing how well Feige had done with the MCU, I think that that kind of also forced Sony's hand. They wanted to see what Feige could do with the character and see if they can revitalize him. Now that we have Tom Holland as Peter Parker and doing so well, it really begs a question of whether or not Sony needs Kevin Feige to help with that character anymore, and if they need his connection to the MCU to really make this character work, even with it being the specific same Spider-Man who was in the MCU. And not only that, but we've had Into the Spider-Verse that did very well. We've had Venom, and then there's a huge buzz for Venom 2 and Morbius. I think that Sony really has something going with their own universe. Hype. We'll get to that here in just a second. I want to finish these thoughts real quick. But it's they've got something really going good with the Sony Spider-Man universe, and they may want to have complete control of that character back so they can do whatever their vision is now. Now, hopefully they've learned a lot from Feige. Hopefully they've learned a lot about planning a universe, and they're going to go and run with that. So I think that there's a really good chance that once No Way Home is done, and that's the last film that's on that contract for them sharing Spider-Man, I think that there's a good chance that they pull that character back and don't re-up the contract with the MCU. And if they do continue to have that Spider-Man in the MCU, I think that Kevin Feige is probably going to have to he's probably going to have to give a little bit more, because I think when this whole thing started, with this whole contract started, I feel like it was more beneficial for Sony to have the MCU involved with Spider-Man than it was for the MCU to have Spider-Man coming into their movies. I think that's flipped now. I think I don't think Spider-Man's as important to the MCU, or no. I think that the MCU wants Spider-Man more than what Sony needs the MCU connection to Spider-Man to help them. So the power in that relationship, I think, is flipped a little bit. So I think that Feige's got to decide, how much do we really need this character, and are we willing to give up more to be able to keep him in the MCU? And Sony really has to decide, can we go this alone? Can we cut ties for this Peter Parker to the MCU and build upon this and do something great with it. And I think they have confidence in the Spider-Man universe that they could do that without having the MCU connected. So I think there's a very good chance that No Way Home is the last time we see Spider-Man in the MCU for a long time. Who knows what happens down the line? Who knows eventually if Disney purchases, if Marvel repurchases Spider-Man in the future, especially if this Spider-Verse that they're creating right now fails somehow and stops making money. I think at that point, let's just put it this way: if they ever do another Spider-Man movie outside of the MCU and it does horrible box office numbers or doesn't have a good, like let's say the Rotten Tomatoes drops by 20 to 30% with them being fully in control of Spider-Man and the box office isn't good, then I think at that point, I think you will see Sony selling Spider-Man back to Marvel. But if they're able to, without having to send any money towards Marvel, without having to share the character, if they're able to build on what they have going on right there, it makes a lot of sense for them to cut ties with the MCU. And the MCU's got such a stable of characters, and there's so many characters that people love, and they're going to introduce more. Shang-Chi, Eternals is probably going to be great. That I honestly don't really think the MCU really needs Spider-Man anymore. It was cool. It was awesome seeing Peter Parker in the MCU, and I think that the MCU is better off for it, but I don't think it's necessary for them to have it. So gosh, I would say probably 75% chance that No Way Home is going to be the last film that we see Spider-Man in the MCU. And hype, what's your point on the first whether Luke killed Muchi? Because honestly, once again, I don't think it's the same one. I think that Disney / Lucasfilm wants to sell Muchi action figures and Funko Pop dolls, and I don't think that they're going to want to have that be the same character. Yep, you are right. I did point that out. Yeah, Muchi is a female Rancor, and the one in Jabba's palace was a male. But this is the only problem that potentially is there, is that over the past a few months, like last half a year or whatever, Lucasfilm in the shows has contradicted things that happen in the books. So we don't know 100% if the current canon, if that is 100% true that Jabba's Rancor was a male. I hope that it's still the case, and I hope that it's not the same Rancor, but it could be. There's potential that they could change that up. It's possible that Muchi could have been the child of Jabba's Rancor, or there's like 20 some years between the Bad Batch and Return of the Jedi. We don't know how, the life cycle of a Rancor. Muchi could be that Jedi's mother, to be honest with you. And it's possible that Muchi is Patissa or that male Rancor's mother. If they only live for 20, 30 years, it's definitely a possibility. SWP Pro, and I'm going to answer some questions here for the next couple minutes if anybody chimes in with anything in the chat or whatever. I agree that he was good in the MCU, and I hope that his sacrifices himself in something like a big twist like MJ becomes Spider-Man, because who the heck knows what happens. Yeah, who the heck knows. But here's the thing, is that we could see Peter Parker, the Tom Holland's character of Peter Parker in the MCU sacrifice himself, but that does not mean that Tom Holland will no longer play Spider-Man, because there is a Spider-Verse, and it could be Tom Holland playing this version of Peter Parker in the MCU, and the Sony universe has Tom Holland playing Peter Parker, but it's not the same exact character. Could have the same mannerisms, have a lot of the same backstory and stuff like that. But in the Sony universe, there was no Happy Hogan. Is that his name? I can't remember now. It's not. There's no Iron Man. There's no MCU period. And it's not the same exact character, but it's played by Tom Holland. How would I feel if they retcon Clone Wars show? At that point, if they were to retcon the Clone Wars show, it would, to me, it would mean that there is no canon. It would mean that we were back into the days of there being G-level canon, which is just the movies, and then the shows were a level below that, and then the books were a level below that, and blah blah blah. And at that point, and it's already kind of split that way, but right now, from everything that they've shown, the movies and the shows are higher level canon, and then everything else is below that. It's still canon, but those things could be retconned at any point. Yeah. What if he gets sucked into a portal and he pops out in a weird new world and then cuts? That's also a possibility. I mean, this next movie is going to be like a Spider-Verse movie. And I think that there's a good possibility that maybe something happens, and it could potentially be because of the Scarlet Witch, because of Wanda, and she messes with the multiverse, and Peter Parker ends up in a different universe. And I think that there's a possibility that happens, and he could be the next Spider-Man in the Sony universe. That's very possible. And this could also give an out, and we'll talk to you later, SWB Pro. This could give an out for Sony to take Spider-Man back and have him no longer in the MCU, but give the possibility of in the future them doing another contract to where he could enter the MCU, because it's the multiverse. So he technically still exists within this multiverse thing that's happening within the MCU and Sony, but they're taking the character back, so potentially he will never return. Probably not going to happen because Sam Raimi is directing this movie. It's possible we could see Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. Who knows? The rumors are out there. I think most people. I just realized my chat's right in front of my face. I will have to correct that at some point. In fact, let's take just a moment to fix that. Let's put it over there and see what happens. Nobody knows what's going to happen with this. I think that it's very likely that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are going to show up in this next Spider-Man movie, and I think that we're going to see even more characters. I think we'll see the Green Goblin, William Dafoe play the Green Goblin in this next Spider-Man movie. It's going to be interesting to see how wacky and crazy it gets. It goes by movies, shows, comics, video games, legends, headcanon, and fan fiction last. I could totally see that. But this is the thing, is when Disney uncanonized all that stuff from that's now legends or whatever, they said that now all canon is canon. Everything that comes from now on is the same canon. The movies, the comics, the shows, the animated series, the books, all that's the same canon. But with Ahsoka, the way that she appeared in the Mandalorian in some ways contradicted what happened in the books, and even the Clone Wars to some extent. The final 7th season contradicted the book, and then we had Kanan's story get contradicted from the comics. I feel like this is the way I look at it, is that the movies and the shows as of right now are historically accurate stories of what happened in the galaxy far, far away, whereas the books and the comics are told through third-hand accounts, and they're the best recollection of how things happen. So there's still stories, there's still history. In our own history on Earth, there's many stories that are told by the victors or told by people that have an agenda for how they tell the stories. So we don't get the complete story exactly how it happened in even our history books, and even things that are happening right now 100 200 years from now aren't going to be told exactly how they happen. So the way I kind of look at it is the movies and the TV shows are how they happen. The books and the comics and the video games and stuff like that are best recollections. They're told by people with agendas, and they're not always going to be 100% accurate. And I think that's how I look at it, so that I can have it not be frustrated with how they're retconning stuff, but and still enjoy it. Star Wars comics are absolutely phenomenal. The fact that they're produced by the people that do the Marvel comics means that they have a lot of experience in it and they know what they're doing. Filming has also wrapped up for No Way Home and Thor Love and Thunder. Thoughts? That's exciting. It's exciting that they've got the filming done. That means they could start working on production. It also means that since they're done filming, a lot of the editing and stuff like that, even if the pandemic were to kick up again, and if we go back into lockdown mode, anything that's already done filming, we can feel fairly confident it's going to come out in theaters around the time that they're already saying. So we don't have to worry about them having to stop production and then restart production on it. So that's pretty exciting. Yeah, so I think that's where I'm going to end it for today. I got some stuff I got to do, some running around. I will be back on. I was going to do some Battlefront 2 last night, and you know what? I got home and I was tired, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go to bed early tonight, and I'm glad that I did. I got a good night's rest last night, but I will be back on Battlefront 2 tonight. I got to grind on some triple XP, try to grind on my Bosk a little bit, see if maybe I could get him up to at least 675 tonight, and get closer and closer to that max on my first character, well, other than the officer. Anyways, everybody have a great day. May the force be with you. I will see